Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank Vinay sir for providing this opportunity and be here. Like as he pointed out during my interview phase, he helped a lot. I still remember his words. Like he said, "Don't think about the marks, rank, service, everything. So you're just meeting those 5 personalities who have so much intellectual, so much experience. So consider yourself to be lucky person and try to enjoy that conversation." So thank you, Vinay sir. And Nikhil sir, obviously he is a constant support in my journey. I cannot explain it in a few words, because I remember, like as he said, I was completely broken. I mean, like you give everything, still you're not able to clear that exam, so you feel like what's happening, what to do. In that case, you need some positive support, the people around you who support you, who motivate you, and who knows what you are going through. So as a aspirant himself, sir knows, and sir supported me, not only through the studies or intellectually or the notes, as a moral support also. So thank you sir, thanks a lot for your support, and if not for you, I wouldn't be standing here. So thanks a lot. uh, for this journey, as a sir pointed out, I didn't plan properly. If you don't plan, you are bound to fail. There is a quote, right? But I failed, and I was able to rectify those mistakes in the next attempt. Prelims was okay for me. I was able to clear the prelims, but mains, the answer writing, I was stuck there. Though next time I cleared, it was not enough to get into the list. And finally, last year, the 2020, I was thankfully able to clear into the list. So as I said, you need to understand where you are going wrong, where you are doing. Everyone knows everything. I mean, the fact that you have cleared the prelims means you have the knowledge, you have the basic understanding. But the fact is, the presentation, the ability to bring those important points which will fetch you more marks is important. And it depends on individual. I cannot say this is a strategy one needs to follow. It depends on your own strengths and own strategies. Okay, so I will answer any questions regarding this. First, you all are political science IR students, right? So you already decided that PSIR will be your optional. Even when I decided, like what made me to choose this optional, uh, obviously when you will be asked, so you will answer the same thing. It's a scoring, there is a overlapping of the GS, and yes, these are the important points. And one more important point is, you should be able to study that subject at least for 2 years, right? The exam itself is a 1 year. If you clear it in your first attempts, that's great. If you're still writing it, so you need to continue that interest in that subject, ability to read it again and again. So that interest is important one when you choose a subject. And second, as you all know, there is a overlap of the syllabus of the PSIR with the GS. The paper one part, where the constitution, the governance part, and also the international movement which you read in history. So there is so much overlap of the syllabus, which will help you score better. It's a kind of symbiosis. It helps your GS and also helps your PSIR part. Uh, After that, the second paper, the IR part, when you see, it's very dynamic, and when you see the trend of the question paper also, it's 90% current affairs based. The static part or the theory part is very limited. So you have to keep updated with the international developments. So that is also interesting, since you will always be concentrating on the current affairs part. So IR part is also interesting and dynamic, and that will be very challenging also when you try to answer those questions. One more part is, you know already, like this PSIR helps a lot in ethics. uh, I got good marks in ethics even last year and this year also. It's around 114 this time. So one of the reason was to bring that political science and IR part into the ethics part. I remember sir used to always say, bring the PSIR thinkers, bring the PSIR notes or the concepts into the ethics part. So that will make your answer very different, very substantive compared to others, and it will help you get more marks. If you see the question papers also, sometimes they are political science questions like Rawls' wheel of ignorance, Gandhi's 7 sins that has been asked in GS4, that are directly from PSIR paper. So PSIR helps a lot in GS, especially ethics, and GS2 also. Like you might have seen, those who have taken PSIR usually have a good GS2 score. And also in essay paper, like when you bring the Greek philosophers or the Indian philosophers, with it gives you different dimensions. So that is really helpful. And the other part I was asked by sir was like how to answer the questions, how to get the good marks. First, as I said, I used to get 90, 110 marks in the PSIR paper in my previous mains, because though I did have a clarity of the concept, but what it needs further is you should be able to connect those topics. And the other one is give more examples and quotes. So to make an answer perfect, I would say the 3 important points. First is clarity. You should know what the question is demanding, and you should know what the concept is. If they ask about for example, the state of nature is a state of war by Hobbes, so you should know what Hobbes is telling. What is state of nature, what is state of war, why is he telling? So this clarity should be very clear, and you shouldn't have any confusion with that aspect. Second one is connecting with that one. You're not supposed to write only about Hobbes or only that aspect. There are other thinkers or other philosophers also, like John Locke brings in a different perspective. Then there is Rousseau, again there is a different perspective. You can bring Gandhi. Actually, Gandhi and his thoughts can be used in almost all the answers, if you see. So Gandhi's concept or the state of nature is different, so you can bring in that. So second one is bring the connectivity of the topics. And third one is quotes or expressions or any experts' opinions that you need to add, which makes your answer much more complete. So first I used to just write about the factual part, not the connective part or the quotes or opinions. So when you include all these 3 things, it will make your answer much more complete and fetch you more marks. If I could give an example, like in IR you have read about NAM, right? So how do you reform NAM? That question might be asked. Like you can say NAM is redundant, or RAM needs rejuvenation or renovation. So how do you renovate it? How do you make it more relevant today? If that question is asked, you can say it needs more participation, or it needs a goal, it needs a certain structure. So these are all very general aspect. That's what is very general, but you need to use those specific words. For example, in one of the paper, I'm not sure the author's name, but he tells for the NAM reformation, it needs 3 aspects. First one is symbolic. So he says, I still remember because I like that concept very much. He says, in one of the author, he says, non-aligned against what? It is non-aligned, but non-aligned against what? You are no longer living in a cold era, right? So there are no 2 blocks. So what is it non-aligned against? So he says the naming itself should be changed. That is, the symbolic reform should be needed. That is, instead of NAM, he tells Southern solidarity. He gives the word, use the Southern solidarity, which is much more relevant. It addresses the need of the hour. We are no longer living in a cold war. So next he talks about structural changes. He says you need a secretariat for the NAM. NAM doesn't have a secretariat. So he needs structural changes are required. Then policy changes. NAM should be able to work with power blocks as well as smaller countries. So these are all reforms. When you say reform, it should be presented in a way with those terminologies which will make it much more effective. So this is one such example. So you will find such articles, such materials online that will make your answers much more enriching. And in IR also, you can actually predict most of the topics. If, for example, UN topic is almost there with respect to reforms or peacekeeping forces. And if we consider today's, there is the issue going on in Taliban, or be it the Chinese rise. So you know the topic, you just collect those contents in different dimensions from the different sources or experts' opinions, then make a list of it, and whenever question is asked, based on that, try to present your viewpoints, right? You have debates on this Rajya Sabha, and some Sansad TV debates are there. So there you can get so many different dimensions. Then the magazines like Diplomat, and even Indian Express has so many good articles where you can, use those articles, quotes of the experts who are like former ambassadors, or those who have worked in a policy institute. You can use those quotes and opinions to enrich your answers.
Any doubts you can ask, anything. You don't need to feel shy regarding any doubts from which books to refer or what sources to read in that regard. So the basic idea of what she tried to communicate is that you take any optional subject, be it political science, be it public administration, be it anthropology. The main part in mains exam is what? What is the main parts in mains exam? It is answer writing, right? If you sit here and if you tell, I'm going to, tell the answer, basically UPSC doesn't accept it. You have to write the answer. Now some students, what they tend to do is that you write the answer, when it is evaluated, they sit next to the evaluator and tell, sir, no, this is what I didn't write, this is what I mean. But you have to logically think, is it possible in the actual exam, right? Evaluator is not, your uncle or your aunt who takes the extra effort, because handwriting, one student was there, I remember, I think he was also writing test series along with Netra. So in one of the test series, he gave a remark saying that, it will improve your handwriting. He told, no, rank for handwriting also is like that only, sir, he told. So even my handwriting and his writing remain similar. But if you look at his handwriting, you can't understand a single word. So when nobody can understand a single word, how can you expect the evaluator to award marks? Because handwriting is one of the things which you tend to neglect. Even when I was writing my mains exam, I neglected the handwriting. Like many used to tell me, improve your handwriting. I tell, no, UPSC doesn't give too much emphasis on handwriting. Mainly they look for content. But when now I evaluate many papers, that is what I feel. If I'm not able to understand a sentence which has been written, how can the evaluator award you marks? The core idea is that you have to work on your answer writing. There is no other alternative to it. Why I can say that when I wrote my first mains with political science, my score was, I think what Netra also last time she scored, same around, I got 90 and 70. Now I had one more friend, Mr. Darshan HV, who is currently the CEO of Belgaum, Indian Administrative Service, 47th rank, 2015. Now he, if you look at his journey, it is a bit unique, because the first 4 attempts what he wrote, he never cleared prelims in that directions. He couldn't clear prelims. Now his family was also undergoing through various stresses, financial problems, etc. So he decided that he's going to write one more exam called as Intelligence Bureau. I think most of you know IB exam, which is there. So he got selected into it, and he told, no, I'm going to go and join the job because I have financial issues. But he was a gold medalist from JSS College. Now many of them told, why don't you give one more attempt? He told, no, it's not possible for me in given conditions, and he went to Delhi. Delhi was his training. And many times what we can think in life is that what you think is bad happens for the good. So when he went to Delhi, he got jaundice in that regard. And his health started to deteriorate to an extent where he couldn't further take part in the training, and the department decided that you go back and you take a rest for 6 months. You can join training with the next batch. And he came back to Bangalore, and at the same time UPSC had called for the application at the same point of time. Now many of us told him, apply for the exam, let it be, because you're going to be here for 6 months. So he told, I'm going to apply, but his optional was Kannada literature. He had never written, but his option was Kannada literature. He told, I can't study Kannada literature anymore because I'm frustrated for 4 months. So I'm going to opt for new optional, that is political science. Since one more friend of mine, Hanmant Raju, who is there, I think even Netra knows him. He's in Indian Revenue Service Customs. So all we both were political science. He told, I'll study with you guys. So fine, he applied for the exam. Luckily, he cleared prelims that year, and now came to the mains part. Now he has to study mains with a new optional within 3.5 months. He has studied barely something. Now he studied, he wrote the exam, even I wrote the exam that point of time. I was you can see, I've studied political science from 1.5 years. He had studied political science for 3 months, and the mains results came. I had not qualified, he had qualified. Okay, so that was the first surprise I had. So I thought maybe, yeah, he has qualified on border or something like that. And results came out, he got 47th rank, he was the Karnataka topper. And the scores came out, he had scored 281 in political science. If you look in 2015, Tina Dabi was the topper, she scored 299, but he was the second topper, 281. In fact, the paper one topper. Now this was a puzzle, right? You read the optional for 1.5 years and you end up getting, I got 160 that year. And here is a person who studied the optional for 3 months, he ends up getting 281. And what is the difference? 121. So basically this have to trouble you. You have to think, right? How can a person study an optional for 3.5 months and score 281? And how can one person studying the optional for 1.5 years end up getting 160? So basically, he was my friend. I asked him, what is a mistake which I have done and what is something which you have did correctly? So only one thing he pointed out. Have you done answer writing? I had never done answer writing. Okay. Why? Even I don't know at that point of time why I didn't answer writing. Various reasons. I tried to write few answers. Basically people will demotivated when you look at your own answer. I used to feel so bad looking at my own answer. And that is where I gave up. And going back and returning back and trying to, read more and read more. He told, this is the mistake what you're trying to do, that you're trying to become an expert in political science, a PhD holder in political science. This is not a knowledge-based exam. Okay, if anyone of you think that by gaining more knowledge that I'm going to pass the exam, that is not the truth. Yeah, basic knowledge is needed at any stage, be it prelims, mains, your options, like basic knowledge is needed. But along with the knowledge, you need to develop certain skills. And skill development depends on, for prelims, if you take, what is the skill which is required there? What is the skill which you need in prelims? Presence of mind. That should be there. You have to be good in elimination, right? Any question paper you see, last year question paper you see, I think even Netra will be able to shed light here because even she consistently cracked prelims, and you can see that by studying just 1 month she was able to clear last time. The reason is that you have to be able to eliminate, you have to have presence of mind, you need to have common sense on that particular day. But if you just keep on reading and you expect UPSC to give you questions which are from book, right? UPSC does not have any contract with Lakshmikant, they do not have contract with let us say Spectrum, saying that we are going to give questions from only this book, we are going to give the same sentence what is there in the book. It's not going to be like that, right? So many times it is your common sense, your knowledge which you have to meet. Now what is the skill which is required in means? You have to know how to stitch up an answer, and that is what she meant. Many answers, it's not about just knowledge, you have to give your presentation, you have to present the scholar's name, how do you link to the particular question in that regard. So unless you're able to develop those attributes, now many times what is the myth which is there, like Vinay sir told, in 2015 when Tina Dabi got first rank, no, everybody will jump, will take political science because next time even I'm going to score. See, if Tina Dabi is scoring does not mean you are going to score unless you put in the effort and you make those changes in that regard. And similarly, some people like, anthro is scoring more or political science is scoring or will jump into that subject. What is the use if 99 people are passing that subject and you're the only person who is failing in that subject, right? It can be the other way around. There is an option where 2 people are passing and you are one among them and 98 have failed. So you cannot just go by an option because, the mass number of people are doing well in that particular option, or, just because others are scoring, we are scoring. Any optional, you can reach 270, 280 on the average score. Like when we used to write, it is 300. I think now 270, 290 itself is the good score. The average score is around 250. So if you want to score 290 or 300, you have to put lot of extra effort. Apart from the notes, you have to dig in new examples. You have to bring in new things. So why we invited the topper in this case? Because recently she has scored well, so she'll be in a better position to inform you how to write, what can be written in that regard. And that's why we are letting the stage open to anybody to ask if you have any particular doubt in specific. I think some of you are clearing prelims this time, some of you are planning to write next time. So if you have any doubt, please feel free to ask.
Regards to optional, yes, the IR part contains of result of the current affairs part will be from IR. So how do you exclusively prepare IR, like current affairs for the IR part of optional, right? Because you know the GS also contains IR. Like how did you differentiate between the GS IR and the part of optional IR? Like because the IR part which comes from optional is like much more deeper than that what GS is. So how did you tackle? Did you integrate both of those, or did you exclusively study for IR current affairs?
Like as you said, IR for GS is different and for optional is different. GS is more of a factual thing. What are the developments? Like if India-China is addressed, what is the trade? How is the territorial disputes going on? Where it is standing, or China in the multilateral forums. So GS is more of a straightforward or factual thing. When it comes to IR, you need more opinions or analysis of that situation. Like the current border dispute or disengagement is going on, so you need more points to address why the situation is like this with India China, because China is known for having unsettled dispute of the borders with majority of its neighbor, and China is on the rise. So there is a concept of two-sided stripe. When a new leader is emerging, it causes a certain instability in the world order. So you need to bring such aspects. Then you can bring Chanakya's concept of neighbors are natural enemies, because there is a natural affinity for expansion of territories. Again, the expert views like C. Raja Mohan or G. Parthasarthi, so they will explain how India China since centuries they are been kind of competing against, be it from civilization and now to the trade, population, or even in agriculture. So they are competing. So you need to bring that aspect. It's not about how much trade deficit we have, or not about what are the sectors that has been opened, but is much more than that. Like how it is also now in one of the books, I think the author explains the disputes between India and China is spilling over to the maritime domain also. We have seen how the South China Sea, Indo-Pacific is emerging. So you need such aspects rather than the factual thing. So what happens, you continuously follow the developments between, be it a multilateral or bilateral. If it is India-Israel, you continuously follow the developments, and then there will be questions or analysis of the development of the relation. That is important in IR. While in GS, it is how it is changing, or more or less, as I said, factual thing.
So basically, we bring in the opinions of like experts, right?
Yes, yes. Then it will, like as I said, when you say the same words simple, it doesn't give weightage. But when you bring in say former ambassador like Vivek Karju, or who have worked and who have so much experience, so that will give you more weightage to it.
Any other question? Yeah.
Question number 1 and 5 are compulsory, and item any 3 revision. Is there any permutations and combinations in the topics where we can select? Where we can do selective revision?
No, I don't think that, but it depends on you, which topic you are very strong in. Look at the 20 marks question, which you are very comfortable and you think you can do justice to that question. Based on that, select the question, I would say.
What if the topic doesn't come?
That is always a gamble with the UPSC, so you cannot say. So all you can do is you can prepare to your fullest to the topics, and yeah. Because sometimes the topic might change, or it might come in a compulsory question also. So you never know, the study you have done can be used in any other paper or any other part also. So I won't suggest that, stick to that question or study those topics. You completely go for it, I would say.
In writing the answer, like how do they split marks? For example, if there is a 15-marker question for introduction and the body for writing the book's name, the author's name, the expertise name, and for the how do they split it? How do they split marks?
Exactly, I'm not sure. Sir can answer that.
You can't have an exact split in marks based on introduction body, but overall what one can say is that the marks depends upon see, for instance, let us take you have written the book's name, you have written the author's name, but you have completely failed to address the demand of the question. So you can't expect to give marks because you have written a book's name and an author name. On the other hand, let us take you have addressed the demand of the question, but you have not brought any theoretical linkage. To give you one simple example, let us take, they give a question, comment on affirmative action, right? Now suppose I write in a general studies pattern, right? Here just I'll explain what is affirmative action, why affirmative action is needed in a particular society, and few challenges associated. You can link current affairs, for example, recent caste census which is being demanded. But if you write from a political science perspective, here you have to bring the linkage to the ideological framework. For example, what do the liberals say about affirmative action? What does the socialists say about affirmative action? Got the point? So here your marks depends upon not just the introduction, what you have written, or the conclusion, what is written. It depends mainly, one, have you addressed the demand of the question? Second one, have you written it from a political science perspective? Got the point? That's why one thing you observe, when the questions are pretty easy, right? Many students do not get marks in the optional subject. The reason is that many tend to write too generally. They fail to connect with the theories or with the scholars. That is where the marks go down. So what we can say that main marks is given to you addressing the demand of the question. Then you can see a slight share goes with respect to how you are able to link it to the concepts and the authors you have written. And third one, innovation. Right now what happens many times, 99% of the times people write the same points because they would have read the same notes, right? And this is a competitive exam. Here marks will be awarded extra to those people who are able to bring new examples, a new perspective into their answer. So that is the answer for your question. Yeah, it depends upon, it revolves around ideologies. Or for example, she spoke about China, right? India, China. Now if you want to link a theoretical framework, you can link to realism. Because in realism, they say the relation between two countries, they always look from a negative perspective, that each other is a threat to other. So that is a theoretical linkage which is there.
So you need to link both the part paper 1 and paper 2. What we tend to do is, since it is asked only in paper 1, we tend to read or write only about that. For example, the question international laws, if they ask, we can bring in the Hobbes concept, like he says the covenants without swords are words. That is, if there is no enforcement authority, the laws will not be adhered to. So that is the international law part, but we can bring in the first part or the thinkers part. So if you link such concepts, then it will be more like
Laws are not enforced, it will be just on words. Can you give an example?
for example, the South China not accepting the UN clause verdict on South China Sea, right? So most of the UN international laws, they are not followed, right, adhered to. I mean, they are used whenever they are beneficial to those countries. So you can use that such example.
I have one question from the paper. I read out. The PMO has emerged as the most powerful institution in India. So just as for discussing. So is it we have to write about they have diluted the federalism, or the officers in the PMO are working hard towards it?
No, PMO becoming major aspect, we can bring in the Prime Minister role has become central instead of the ministers. Where we can link the democracy or the party politics in India, where it is revolving around the personality rather than the ideology. Also, we can bring that aspect. And also, we can say the Prime Minister's centrality. Rather than diffusing it to the different ministers, Prime Minister is taking the central role. That you can. No, you can't say. I mean, no, you can't say that. No.
But we can't. Can we include the federalistic the idea has been diluted by taking away the tax of the states and the boundaries. Boundaries have been altered.
The point is that they asked that PMO is emerged the power center, right? Basically what she's trying to say is that here you don't go into writing that they've diluted the powers of the state. It's about you have to identify in your answer that how Prime Minister office is becoming more powerful in India. To give you one example, when Rafael deal was signed, it was not the Minister of External Affairs or the Defense Minister, it was the Prime Minister who sealed the deal. So you can see, as she told, what is happening in India, that because of the personality of PM Modi, Now everything is revolving around the prime minister taking important decision for the country and important policy making in the country. So you can see India has become more of a prime minister form of government, and here prime minister's office has taken the precedence in that regard. And most of the decisions which are taken by other ministries, now they're going through PMO's office. So then you can write in your answer that it depends upon the personality of the prime minister, because during coalition government when Manmohan Singh was there, right, there is a famous quote in BL Fadia. They say that when Nehru screamed from Delhi, the chief minister in South India would shiver. But when under Manmohan Singh time, when Karunanidhi sneezed from Chennai, it was Manmohan Singh who caught cold. Right? Means the states played an important role during coalition politics. So there you don't go into the aspect of they're weakening the tax laws, etc. You just try to write about how prime minister is playing a central role, as she said. So any other doubt to anybody else? Yeah.
Thank you.
One thing is, the paper earlier, how to write balanced answers. How to write balanced answers. Other thing is, while writing answers, what kind of maturity that we should show while writing answers?
Maturity in the sense, I would say use those terminologies like strategic or the words which are PSIR related, not the general science. That it will show the answer is more mature and more balanced. When it comes to balancing the answer, for example, say the India's nuclear policy of no first use. You can say what are the positives of adhering to the no first use, and what are the negatives of adhering to the non first use policy. So in the end, it's you can say I feel that India should change the not first use policy, and give certain statements. You don't have to be always this is the right, this is the wrong. You bring in both the positives and negatives of it, and then bring your opinion as a conclusion. Like again, the globalization. Some may say globalization has resulted in inequalities. Yes, of course it has resulted. Give certain substantial points, but it also has improved the standard of living of the people. It has moved millions of people out of poverty in China. So as a conclusion, you can say it needs, like as I think one of the experts says, we need a globalization with a human face. So yes, globalization is needed, but not in the same form. It needs change, so that it reaches, the fruits of development reaches every people, every lower rung of the society. So that should be a balanced answer. It doesn't mean you can only give both the pros and cons. In the end, it's your opinion and you substantiate with that. Book. Like in IR for the theoretical part, and you have Vinay Malhotra, one international politics, international, and then Andrew Haywood book is there. Then current affairs related, use the Hindu articles, Indian Express, Diplomat, and all the debates. And sometimes what happens, there will be certain videos like lectures of the experts, like Noam Chomsky. Certain lectures will be there. When you make a notes of them, it will be very helpful. And also again, YouTube and Google are, I would say, the best source, because they give you that will make your answer much more different, diverse. And certain topics you can have a small videos, like for example, if I remember mine, democracy is a question will always be there in a democracy, and you might have come across many experts and all. So then there is another expert, Alex de Tocqueville. So we don't read much about him, but there is a book by him, Democracy in America, if I'm not wrong. So read those, just the gist of those books or videos on it, and use those answers or the points in your answer, which will make it different and interesting also.
How important is presentation being there for PSR? Because when you say PSR, there is a whole lot of content in it which are there. And again, there is an aspect of presentation. So how can we deal with those two?
Like as you said, presentation is important. I remember sir telling, don't write everything you want. Presentation is important because that's what reaches the exam checker. So it should be easy, it should be innovative, and it should address the demand of the question. So you can use the block diagrams, flow charts for the better representation of your answers. And one more thing is address the question correctly. We tend to write everything we know about it. So don't do that thing. That was the mistake I used to do. For example, if the question is liberalism is a revolutionary idea, I used to write everything about liberalism, the schools of thought, everything. But no, the question is liberalism and why it is a revolutionary idea. So give an introduction about liberalism and why it is revolutionary, because it was a kind of a disruptive ideology. It brought in the concept of rights, and then it was able to modify itself to the challenges of communism. It became as a social liberalism, welfare state concept came in, so it was able to change itself. That's why it can be called as a revolutionary idea. So first give a thought on the question and what you want to write to address that demand of the question, and then based on that break it, use flowcharts and certain block diagrams, which will be, I think, fetch more marks than the usual paragraph writing. It is recommended, but you have to write so lot of things in short duration of a time. If you put it in the form of blocks or flowcharts, it's very kind of reaches the examiner easily, and it also gives you clarity. Also, when you write, you keep on writing, and the flow is might miss sometimes. So if you put a block and then put a border and restriction, and you structure that answer, it will be much more, I think, beneficial. I think the big picture you might have all seen with the Frank Rasen Pereira. So I still remember the UN reforms. So all the panelists are experts, like Harshvi Pant, his views and all. Even the small quote you can use in the essays, ethics, and GS papers, definitely.
Okay, this online question, Bhuvana was asked that can you criticize the central and state government with respect to implementation of the policies in your answer?
Criticizing
the central and state government with respect to implementation of the policies in your answer.
Yes, we can criticize. I think if the question is asked, you have to write it. If the question is implied or ask your opinion on it, if you have a data to back it up, if you have an example, if you have if you have reasons to say yes, it should be criticized, it is wrong in doing so, you can definitely write it.
Okay. Last two questions. One is from Dhanush, who says that how to expect which issue is going to come in IR. That how did you expect that what is going to come? How because many developments are happening. How to pinpoint that what issue will come?
Exactly predicting is very difficult, but we can have a few aspects which are continuously developing. For example, the Indo-Pacific and Quad is one such topic which is continuously in the news, and there are also so many developments in that aspect also, be it the new AUKUS multilateral platform, first one, and then again when you see the West Asia, the Taliban situation is a very hot topic. So when you analyze the current affairs, you can predict 80% of the questions which might come, and then 20% is again you cannot say which it is. Only thing is you can bring all your experience or knowledge to address that demand of the question.
And the last question is asked that how do you make your current affairs notes, since it's the dynamic part?
Okay, current affairs notes, again newspaper, follow at least one newspaper religiously, very rigorously. For example, we all know Hindu is the everyone follows it. Then other opinions, especially for IR part, Indian Express editorials I would recommend, because they are very crisp and clear. So that one is one more thing. And for economical, I would say Live Mint editorials are very good. They give expert opinions, they give data backed reasonings also. So based on the topics, you can follow these three newspapers and make notes out of it.
Okay, yeah.
So I have two questions. Firstly, when you get the paper, how do you prioritize your, which one to attack first and which one to keep it later? And the second one is, do you always conclude with views favorable to the current dispensation, or can you disagree with that?
I think you can disagree with that. You don't have to always agree with the statement or the question. You can disagree, but provided you give a reason for it. And then the routine or how you tackle the question is, I started from the serial wise, giving almost 35 minutes each question, 5 questions. So within 35 to 40 minutes, first question would usually take more time. So based on that, you follow it. If you find any question taking more time or you don't understand, better to skip and then jump to the next one. And if you have a time, come back. I would say answering those questions which you know in a better or a more structured way is better than attempting all the questions. You need to address the demand of the question if you can. Don't, just for the sake of attempting, don't try to attempt all. Even if you attempt 18 questions, it should have a quality. If you're doing for 20, it's great. But if you're not able to, then at least 8 should have a quality answers. Like the questions you said for GS4 also, I started with the first questions, then lastly the case studies. So it depends on your comfort level.
Case studies are getting bigger by the day. So would it be better if you start with case studies and then move on to
Yeah, many do it, but what I felt was, like, when you start answering the first few questions, you get into the GS4 mode where you get those words easily, the examples easily, that you can use it in a case study better way. Because starting and jumping into the case study might take more time. So when you are in that flow of answering 10 questions, you can bring the GS aspect more in a better way for the case studies, I would say.
Yes, any other doubt?
The quiz to actually substantiate my answer with the expert opinion and the current affairs. We are aware that there are lots of channels. Like suppose ORF, ORF is there, Raisina dialogue is also happening. There are news on AI, like there is Sansad TV. So how can we manage with all these like single day?
See, you don't have to follow sometimes all the debates, right? I mean, if you feel that it has a substance, then read it. And you don't have to agree with those opinions also. You can have your own opinion and you need to back it up. So use the topics first and then prepare for it. Your comfort level, as I said, which language you feel comfortable or which experts you think it resonates with your thinking, go for that one.
Okay. Any other doubt before we wind up the session? Yeah.
what was that one X factor that made you
I think believing in oneself that yes, you can do it, that will definitely help in me, I think, and you all, I would say.
Yes. Any other question from the students?
Ma'am, can you share your interview experience and any questions, opinion-based questions were there regarding IR in interview?
Yeah, my interview was on August 25th. It was by BB Vyas Sir Board. The questions were most on, as I said, I worked in automobile company. So the questions were mostly based on that. For example, on the exhaust system and on the scrappage policy of the government. And the rest of were very general questions, like how you define growth and development, and what are the, in opinion based, they ask like what are the measures you will take or you will concentrate on for women empowerment. So that was one opinion based. And IR related, they asked in what's going on with the India and Nepal, what is the current relationship status with India and Nepal, is how is it going, what are the political developments in the India Nepal relationship.
Yes, I think you had one doubt, right? Why you selected PSR as your option?
Like as I said, like most of you would also agree, it is overlapping with the GS. It helps in ethics, and IR part again is interesting and dynamic. So you will read every day. So I felt it was more interesting, and the even the first part also, the philosophers, the thinkers part, it is quite different from the GS, and it was able to keep my interest. So that's why I took that.
Political science is the master science. That's right. Huh. Yeah. Any other doubts for any other student? Yeah.
here in this case, madam, like here we need to balance the concept of global citizen and the patriotic nationalist. For
I don't think you have to go deep to that level of following or keeping a balance of global citizen. Based on the question demand, you can actually take a side. If a certain concept is there, if for example RCEP was India didn't sign RCEP, so you cannot say as a global citizen you should support it. No, our interests are not listened to, our interests are not taken care of, so we are moving out of it. So you can take you don't have to always take a balanced view on that.
This, as I say, right, like the subject, don't love the subject, because heart will be broken at some point of time. Okay. So
You cannot always give a balanced way, because when you have to take a decision at some point, even when you pass and you have to take a decision. You cannot say yes, this is also good, this is also good. No, but in the end, what are you doing, what are you going on with which side, right?
yes, any other doubt? Anybody else? Nandan, you have any doubt? Doubt is cleared. Okay.
When they give a statement, sometimes it's the question is hidden. I mean, for example, as again I said, the state of nature, or for example, say Marxist quote, the state is a tool of oppression, if they say. So there is a concept, you need to bring in Marx, you need to bring in the concept of state, you need to bring in how the ideology affected that the political science itself, the development. So if you write it, it will definitely come. You will be able to link the different topics.
Means his doubt is that should we read all these scholars, or if we read only few scholars?
Those mentioned in the syllabus, definitely you have to. But if you feel interesting a certain scholars, or if you feel like, you can bring in 3-4 thinkers to that, because even I was scared, like how many thinkers are there, how do we remember all of them? Right, I remember sir and Hanmantraj sir also saying, no, at least 30 to 40 thinkers and experts you should know. So make a list of it. If democracy comes, I'll quote this one. If affirmative action comes, I'll quote this one. If the question is on liberalism, I will use this. If it is about justice, I'll use this one. So you should be having such quotes and expert opinions, or the viewpoints. Be ready with those things.
Does IR play any role in interview?
Uh,
As an IFS officer, foreign service, if you are aspiring for foreign service, you are given your first preference as foreign service, does IR play any role in the interview?
No, I think it depends on the board. If the board finds that you have put IFS as a first preference, they might actually concentrate only on that topic. Sometimes they not even ask about that. Sometimes there won't be even any IR questions also. So putting IFS doesn't have any impact on the question they will ask in interview. Sometimes yes, they might ask, but be prepared. Why IFS? Why you find it interesting or challenging? So those questions definitely they will be asked. But again, it depends on the chairman or the board.
See, for Nandan's question, right, like scholars, you don't worry too much about scholars. Like Darshan, what I told, like in IR, it told like, where did you quote foreign scholars? He told I used to write K. Subramaniam. Then he told, what did he quote? I told, who knows? I told my view and I wrote K. Subramaniam. Then he told, like, why? He told, how does the examiner know, unless he Googles out that, specifically who has told. But on the other hand, it can't also, go wrong with respect to interview, because interview, there is one close friend of mine, he got 120 in interview, 120 or I think 110. The reason was that while explaining, right, they asked him why you chose political science. They say if you want to bluff confidently that the board does not know. So he bluffed in saying that he has interest on some scholar, etc., etc. So they asked him, okay, tell me a few books written by this scholar. He was able to tell, and he told, like, are you following this scholar? He told, yes, he's passed away, a few years back, because And when he came outside the interview, he googled that scholar because he had not seen the photo, right? And surprisingly, the person who asked him that question itself was the scholar in that regard. So that's what I told. If you want to bluff, you can't bluff extensively also. That happens many times because even when we are reading scholars, right? Like Hannah Arendt. At least we have to make it is a she or a he in that regard. So if you write Hannah Arendt, he said like this, right? So these are the basic things one has to know. That's what I told. This exam is not just about knowledge. It's about one is your skill, your smart work, and third 1% luck also matters. That's what I told. It's a journey where those people who believe in God will start not believing in God, and those people who don't believe in God start believing in God after you go through UPSC, right? So I hope there is no other doubt, or is any other doubt? Fine. So I would like to thank Ms. Netra Meti on behalf of Insights IS for giving her valuable time. Because she came all the way from Bijapur, today itself, and she had to attend one more session, and there was many issues. So there was a slight delay, but still, she was able to make it and give her inputs. So once again, I thank her on behalf of the team Insights IS, and I think there's a next session, and we'll hope to see you again. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all, and I wish all the best for your UPSC journey. Thank you.